Yeah, hey, I'm a really huge fan of yours. We're big fans of yours here at JoBlo.com. You're a legend to us, sir. So it's really
Oh my
pleasure to
God,
talk
thank
to
you
you.
so much.
Some
That's
of
very
you've directed some of my favorite movies, I have to say, a lot of them. So, okay, so let's get started with the Misfits then. So I have to ask you, it kind of felt when I was watching it like almost the sequel to the Thomas Crown Affair, that never really happened. And it was really cool kind of seeing Pierce Brosnan back in a leading role in that mode. And I was just wondering, how did you end up choosing him for the role? Because I thought he was great.
I've known Pierce for years and years and years, and we've a few times we've tried to make a movie together, but it hasn't happened. So when I read this script, he was the guy I thought of immediately. I thought this is made for Pierce, and sent him the script. He loved it, and so it happened very quickly and very easily, which is very unusual. Uh, but yes, I know what you mean when you mention Thomas Crown Affair. There is that certain feel about his charm and wit and humor and so on that is similar in those movies.
And the guy, I mean, he can pull off a suit like nobody else, right?
Yes. And by the way, I don't know if this is common knowledge, but I'm going to tell you something that I hope is not going to, blow up in my face and end up in a lawsuit. But I was offered to direct a James Bond movie.
I wish you had. I was just going to ask. I would have been amazing. So yeah,
it would have been amazing, and I'm kicking myself that it didn't happen. But that this was now I'm not sure. It was the first one that Pierce made.
Yeah.
So what is it called now?
Goldeneye.
It escapes me. But it was offered to me, and at that point, Timothy Dalton was James Bond.
Oh yeah.
And I apologize now. This is a terrible thing to say, but I wasn't. To me, Timothy Dalton didn't embody what James Bond was to me, and of course at that point Pierce had been doing a lot of TV and stuff like that, but I loved him as an actor, and I had a meeting with Barbara Broccoli and the whole gang, and I said, I think you should recast James Bond, and Pierce Brosnan should be James Bond. And they said, no, we are happy with Timothy Dalton, and he's James Bond, and that's how we want to do it. And I turned down the movie because of that. I swear to God. And it's a terrible thing to say. And I think I've never told this to anybody. And like I said, like now everybody's going to hate me. But I turned it down because of that reason. And then another few months went by. And what happened? Now they are doing Bond.
And they should have called you back.
And Pierce Brosnan is starring in it. So I can't take credit. Maybe somebody else geniusly thought of it or whatever. But that's what I was trying to make happen. It didn't happen in my time. I went on to do something completely different. And when they made the next James Bond movie, Pierce Brosnan was James Bond.
Yeah, but you made one of the best spy movies ever, though, The Long Kiss Goodnight. I mean, it's a hitman movie kind of, but I mean, to me, that is like up there with any of the James Bond movies, because I think anytime I read an interview with Samuel L. Jackson and they ask him what his favorite role is, he always says that The Long Kiss Goodnight is the best movie he ever made. And we do a series here on JoBlo where we revisit our favorite movies, and I think my episode on The Long Kiss Goodnight was one of our most watched and most commented ones.
Oh, what a nice thing to hear! Thank you so much. And yeah, Sam is a good friend of mine, and he tells me the same thing, that he gets more questions about Long Kiss Goodnight and comments and fan mail and all that stuff than any of his other movies. And I'm just amazed, with the guy who's made billion movies and Pulp Fiction and so on. He says this is his favorite movie, this is his favorite character, and he's always asking me, when are we going to make the sequel?
When are you going to make the sequel?
Well, let's have all your followers write a message to Warner Brothers / New Line Cinema, because I've talked to them about this, but it's, studios think in a certain way, and they look at just the hard numbers, and while The Long Kiss Goodnight has a huge cult following and it is a really well-liked movie, it wasn't a kind of a box office hit that you would just associate immediately with sequels and so on. But So I've talked to them about it, but they've been kind of like, we don't know. And Sam and I, we already have a whole plot line figured out and everything. So, if there are now people, watching this, listening to this, reading this, uh, send a message to New Line Cinema and it'll happen. If enough people want it to happen, it will happen. Because I know there's an audience for it.
Yeah.
Who have, people who have seen it in a theater, on TV, cable, streaming, or however they have DVD. There's an audience for it, and we have a great storyline for it already figured out.
I was 13 when it came out. I went to see it in theaters, and it was one of my favorite movies then, and it's still one of my favorite movies now.
That's awesome. It's funny because I was 13 when I made it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, though, another one. We have a podcast too, and I was talking with my co-host the other day, and you got so much shit for it when it came out, but it's held up so well is Cutthroat Island, because you took a lot of crap for that movie when it came out, but like then 25 years later you watch it and it's amazing, and it's like all practical, and it did kind of what Pirates of the Caribbean did like 10 years before. Is that gratifying to a certain extent? Because it's like one of those things like, oh, he was right all along. Like it was actually amazing.
Yeah, it's, thank you so much for saying that, and it means a lot to me. And it is a traumatic experience because there was just a lot of things that went against us when making that movie. Starting with the fact that our original star Michael Douglas pulled out of the movie at the last minute, and now I get another lawsuit. And then we had to kind of scramble to put it all together. And like you said, the movie came out probably 10 years before Pirates of the Caribbean. And all I wanted to make was a movie for, every moviegoer who has a kid in their heart who wants to see a swashbuckling, like a Errol Flynn kind of a old-fashioned adventure movie on high seas. And I felt like we delivered that. However, there were just so many things, so many odds stacked against us when the movie came out that it just never had a chance. It didn't even have a chance in the theaters, and we got so much, like you said, we got so much shit thrown on us because of that movie. I was married to the star. It just was seen as some kind of a vanity trip. And I poured all my love of cinema into that movie, wanting to give the audience a fun adventure, and it's been gratifying. You're right. It's been gratifying that later on, a lot of people have said like, "Hey, I saw that movie and I really enjoyed it. It was fun." So I thought the movie looks beautiful. I thought the musical score is great.
The score is really good. And Gina Davis is amazing in it too. I mean, you guys also were really ahead of the curve too in terms of like female action stars. Like you were like really early in that.
We were too ahead of the curve. It's the same. I think same thing with the Long Kiss Goodnight and Cutthroat Island is that people were just not ready for the idea yet that women can be action stars, and it's hard to be a trailblazer and then things don't work out quite the way you wish they did. So it's definitely the Cutthroat Island has been like the big scar in my heart that I've carried all my life.
I don't understand it because it really is a great movie. But you've gone on to have an amazing career though. And getting it back to the Misfits, one of the things I wanted to ask you about this movie is that I really thought it was cool that you shot it in Abu Dhabi, right? I feel like that's never really shown on screen like that, like because it is really cool looking. It looks like the city of the future and the glamour. I thought that was pretty neat.
And that was my approach when we decided that that's where we're going to shoot the movie, Abu Dhabi and Dubai. That I wanted to create this fantasy world that doesn't. I mean, those are pretty glamorous places.
I was looking at the taxis. Do they actually have like Porsches pull up?
No, they don't have Lamborghini taxis.
Yeah.
I wanted to create this. My whole thing for the movie was that like I wanted to be all these like glossy, beautiful buildings with metal and glass and shiny reflective surfaces, and all cars to look amazing, all people to look amazing. I even created a situation where hotel lobby, there's this kind of a party going on, and there's a woman walking with a cheetah.
I know. I saw. I thought that was really cool.
I was just like, I want this world to be so over the top that people won't even believe it. And for example, getting that cheetah it took months of bribing people and cutting red tape, because having a wild animal in a public place with people there and actors is not really a popular thing that you can just do easily. But yeah, I wanted to create a world that doesn't exist, but existed in my fantasy imagination of like the most money dripping, fancy, expensive, glossy place on earth.
I want to go now after watching it. I don't think I can afford it, but I'd like to go. Bringing things back a bit. Okay, I wanted to ask you, one of the movie series that I've always really liked, and I hope you don't mind me mentioning it, is The Adventures of Ford Fairlane. And I think that was another movie that you probably took a little shit for when it came out because of Dice. But I think also it's held up well because it's a really, I mean, he's a particular kind of character, but it's kind of a fun, like you said, like rock and roll detective movie, and I've always had a good time going back to revisit it. And it's also a movie that's well loved by our base on the website.
Your base is awesome.
Yeah. We love you, man.
Yeah, that was another case of just I guess timing not being our friend, because Andrew Dice Clay was in the late 80s, early 90s. He was a giant comedic star. I mean, he was selling out stadiums. And as things go in the world and in Hollywood particularly, there are movements that happen. Mm-hmm. Of course, most of the time they are good, whether they deal with political issues or race issues or female issues or gay and lesbian rights or whatever. Of course, those are always good things that people start paying attention to something and make things better. But in this case, really, just when we had finished the movie and it was about to come out, this really, really huge backlash against Dice happened, where people said that he was homophobic and anti-gay and all these things, which I know he wasn't. And I know the guy personally, and he was the sweetest Jewish kid from New York who just created this persona, this Dice Man persona. And comedians, they always take things from real life and make comedy out of it. And of course, his comedy was very rough. It was a lot of it was about women and relationships, and I don't even remember, but maybe he had a couple of gay jokes there as well. But if you look at any comedians, any famous comedians, they've all done that. They've made fun about fat people and different races and different religions, and it's just where comedy comes from.
It was a different era. I mean, things were just different back then. They were, but so he had this huge tide turn against him, and he's like, his career as that kind of a comedian, it was like overnight it was gone, from selling out Madison Square Garden to being nothing, and it just hit our movie right at the wrong time. Just when our movie was about to come out, this happened. And so the public opinion turned against him, turned against the movie. We took a lot of shit for the movie that was, it was unapologetic. It was very, it was a real guy's movie about a guy who, chases women and has a fun life. It was completely politically incorrect movie. And then that became a big problem when it came out. Well, it's also kind of like evocative of the era too, though. Like, I mean, I watched that movie, and it's like, if you want to get like a good look at like LA in like the 90s or the late 80s, it's kind of, that's one of the things I've always really liked about the movie. And also, I always really enjoyed the look of your movies, and that goes to the Misfits as well. Like, I find that you have a really cool, like, I don't know how to say, like a sheen or something like that. Like, it's really slick, and it's like, oh, this is a Renny Harlin movie, And
thank you for saying that. One of the main reasons I love movies is that it's a visual medium, and I've always been really, really particular about the DPs I work with, And with some movies, I've interviewed 80 DPs to find the one that I believe in. And about Ford Fairlane, and I take pride in actually, I feel like I've discovered some DPs who have gone on to do amazing things. And one of them was Oliver Wood, who was looking for a DP for the Adventures of Ford Fairlane. I wanted somebody that would give me a really special kind of a glossy look and make LA look amazing. And Oliver Wood had never done a feature. He'd done only TV, but he had been doing the Miami Vice TV series.
Which perfect.
And I looked at the stuff that he had done, and I was like, that's the guy I want. And it was a real job to convince 20th Century Fox that I want this guy who's never done a Hollywood movie and blah, 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 but that's the guy I want. He saw the movie. We had a great time. He gave the movie a great look. And because of that, then I also hired him to do Die Hard 2. And he made that look great. And then we were planning to do Cliffhanger together, but it got pushed back at the last minute. And then he had already done all the prep and scouting with me and everything. And then at the last minute, we got pushed back, and he needed a job, so he took another movie, and that's how our roads parted, sadly. And we never made another movie together. Well, he was supposed to make Cutthroat Island, but it just some movies are cursed. We had shot maybe 2 or 3 nights in Malta, and we had just finished shooting. It was in the middle of the night. It was dark. We were walking together past these huge water tanks that they have, and we're talking and walking. All of a sudden, he just disappears. I'm like, what happened? And he had fallen into one of the tanks.
Oh man!
So it was like at least a 10-foot fall, and broke his leg really badly. Thank God, nothing worse than that. But doing a pirate movie on high seas just turned out to be impossible for him. So we had to get another DP, and that was the last time we worked together. Oliver Wood went on to do Jason Bourne movies and all the big action movies and everything, and he's a legend. And I take credit for starting his career. Just to mention another DP that I can't say that I created him, but I gave him his first big movie is Guillermo Navarro.
Oh yeah.
Who had done Desperado with Robert Rodriguez, which was still a pretty small movie, but I loved the kind of a look he created. So I hired Guillermo to do The Long Kiss Goodnight, which was kind of ironic because he's Mexican and has spent his life in hot sun and barely had ever seen snow. And Long Kiss Goodnight all happens in snow, and we were in freezing conditions in Canada.
I'm in Canada right now, although it's hot. I'm in Montreal.
Okay. I love Montreal, by the way.
Yeah, you did Driven here. I remember when you were here. Yeah.
Yeah. So and of course Guillermo went on to win Oscars and stuff. So I feel I pride myself in having an eye for good DPs.
I'm getting the wrap up signal, but I got to ask you one question. Die Hard 2 is another movie. I think when it came out, people were like, oh, yeah, they kind of compared it unfavorably to the first one. But I also think that's another one that like years later, now people are like, oh, it's like as good as the first one. It's amazing. And it's always been one of my favorite movies, especially the icicle through the eye scene. And I just wondered if you had any thoughts on Die Hard 2 and the way that its legacy has really grown, that it's become like this kind of Christmas classic on par with the original. If you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, that was a special movie for me. I actually was offered it while I was still shooting Ford Fairlane, and I shot them back to back. I mean,
that's crazy.
Literally, they were just a matter of a couple of weeks, and I was shooting another movie for
two
Fox.
Joel Silver movies back to back must be intense.
Yeah. So it was pretty mad, and plus it was a complicated movie to shoot. It was a winter when there was just no snow anywhere in America or North America, and so we kept chasing snow. It was a super hard movie to make, and I was worried every day that I was going to get fired because of the going over schedule and over budget and all the technical challenges we had making that movie. But I enjoyed it, and I will tell you maybe a little known secret that the Steve D'Souza wrote a great script, but Steve was not really a huge fan of logic. So for him, you know, in this scene, Bruce Willis is having a fist fight with somebody. In the next scene, he's having a gunfight, and then he's having a fist fight again. How he finds a gun, how he loses a gun, these kind of things Steven was not so interested in. So I, being a logic guy, I spent a lot of time figuring out, like, okay, how can he have a gun in this scene? Where did he get it from? And how come in this scene he's not using a gun, but he's using his fist? So obviously he's lost the gun somehow. Or like a scene where he's trapped inside this big cargo plane on the tarmac, and the villains have surrounded it and now shooting it up with machine guns and throwing hand grenades in it. Steve D'Souza, I asked Steve D'Souza, well, how is he going to get out of it? Like, how does he get into the next scene? And he's like, I don't know, maybe there's like a back door or to the plane or something. I'm like, well, that's so lame. It's like, can't be that easy. And so I stayed up many nights thinking about it, and then I just came up with a simple idea that there's a ejection seat.
Oh my god, that scene's so good.
And fly out. I mean, the funny thing is that nobody's ever come to me and said, there's no ejection seats in cargo planes. There's never been a cargo plane in the history of aviation that has an ejection. It doesn't exist. Plus, even if you were able to use it, on a plane like that, you wouldn't get high enough to survive. You would go out and you would land on the ground before the parachute even opens. So there's like a million reasons why it makes no sense. But in that scene, it just worked. And so to me, I always remember Die Hard 2 from the fact that I had to be very inventive in getting myself out of the corners that Steve D'Souza painted me in. Great writer, great script, funny movie, but he didn't make it easy for me.
Oh man, well, thank you so much. I could talk to you all day. There's like a million things I want to talk to you about, but I really appreciate the time, and you're a legend, man. We love you. I hope you get Long Kiss Goodnight.
Let's do it. Let's do this again.
Yeah, take care, man.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye.